One of the great things about the Steam Deck is not only is it a fantastic handheld, but just like the Switch that inspired it, you're able to dock and use it as a more traditional TV setup as well. But the question is, outside of those occasional times where you might just use the Steam Deck itself directly as a controller, what's actually the best controller to grab to use with it? And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to go over 5 of my favorite options to use with the Steam Deck, their ups and downs, and which one is right for you. A portion of today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. Now, one of the great things about controller options for PC, including the Steam Deck, is the vast number of options that actually work for it. When you look at stuff like Xbox or PlayStation or Switch, there's a lot of controllers that are designed specifically for those consoles in mind, and very often those controllers will all say, also supports PC, giving you quite a few options. The thing is, for the most part, you can actually stick with a lot of the major first-party options, and those can be very excellent choices, but there are some third-party ones I'd like to recommend as well. So we're gonna start with some of the first-party obvious ones, and then venture a bit more out, starting with what I would say is probably the safest choice, the Xbox controller. Now, the reason why I think Xbox is a bit of a safe choice isn't because necessarily I wanna be like, oh, you know, Xbox is the best thing out there. It's just that when it comes to a lot of PC versions of games, the Xbox layout is what is basically considered as the assumed default. Many games will show you the ABXY layout that controller has, even using the same color patterns, and so it's a very intuitive, direct experience to use this controller with your Steam Deck. Not only that, but as far as just raw ergonomics go, I actually do really like the Xbox controller. Part of this is because I do have a love for offset sticks versus symmetrical, so that is a point in its favor. And of the controllers on this list, I think it is also one of the ones that lends itself a little better to people with larger hands. And if looks are something that are important to you, that is something that Xbox is very heavily focused in. There are so many different versions of the official Xbox controller that you can grab. You can also go to Design Lab and do your own customized version. You can also, of course, pay even more to get upgraded versions of the controller with the Xbox Elite controller. There's Design Lab options for that. There's the core controller version where you don't get all the extra doodads at a better price, or you go all out for the Elite controller. There are tons of options when it comes to using the Xbox style controller with Steam Deck. Now, with all those positives in mind, there is, I think, one glaring omission about this controller that's very important to talk about, and that's when compared against other first-party options, and even some third-party ones, a key feature it's missing is gyro. Gyro controls become more and more popular in a lot of games, especially in first-person view ones. It's just giving you a better way of having refined aiming control that you don't necessarily always get with a stick. And of the major first-party manufacturer options, Xbox is missing that entirely. There have been rumors that they are working on a new controller option to be available that will offer that alongside some other upgrades, but there's been no official news on that yet, so we have no idea what the timeline on that is, if it's even happening in the first place anymore. So if you really like the idea of Xbox, but you want motion controls, you can wait and hope for that to happen, but as of right now, not a choice. Next up, since we started with Xbox, we might as well jump right over to the PlayStation 5 DualSense. Now, the DualSense is able to be used with the Steam Deck, and I think one of the immediate things I want to shout out about what's great about this particular controller is all the extra features that are DualSense specific. Things like the haptic feedback, the built-in microphone, adaptive triggers, a bunch of awesome stuff that only actually works for a select number of games. There has to be titles that actually are designed to take advantage of the DualSense controller. If it's anything that is first-party PlayStation that was initially exclusive to the system and then came to PC, that's going to support it. There are some pretty major third-party titles as well that do support it as well. And in those cases, if you want to take advantage of these extra immersive features, things that I'm personally a sucker for, those are going to be things the DualSense specifically is going to be able to offer that you can't get out of any other controller. Worth noting, DualSense features are a little fickle with Steam input, so you do have to disable that in order to make sure that you're going to be able to use things like adaptive triggers in-game. Pretty easy to disable yourself. And aside from all these additional features, this particular controller does of course also offer symmetrical sticks, which if that is a preference you have, out of the big first-party options, that's the only one that's doing it. Now when it comes to downsides for this particular controller, the biggest thing honestly, battery life. There has been an improvement in some of the more recent ones that PlayStation has released, but generally speaking, the PlayStation DualSense has the worst battery life out of all the mainline controllers. The main reason for this is because of the fact that it has all those additional nifty features that I talked about, and all those things also happen to drain more battery. So if you want an option that you're not constantly worried about topping off, or you're really against the idea of ever using it wired on occasion, that is one point against the DualSense's favor worth being aware of. Now, similar to the Xbox controller, there is also a pro option with the DualSense known as the DualSense Edge, which offers a whole bunch of upgrades. In this particular case, I actually am not as big of a fan of using that with Steam Deck, primarily because a lot of the big selling points of the DualSense Edge are its unique direct compatibility options with the PS5, things that you can't take advantage of on Steam Deck. There are some things you can still take advantage of, like the adaptable triggers, the ability to swap out the stick modules if you're ever afraid of drift and you want an easy solution for swapping that out instead of having to buy a whole brand new controller. There are upgrades. You're just not able to take full advantage of everything the controller has to offer on a Steam Deck compared to a PS5. So the increased price point really isn't quite as worth it in this situation. Real quick though, I do want to take a quick moment to thank today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Mental health is something that I've had a very long series of back and forth days with. I've had some very low lows and some good highs, and to be honest, actually right now I'm in a pretty decent place, better than usual, but the lows are something that I've certainly contended with. In fact, I even did a video a couple years back talking about how I was dealing with burnout, and that's really a thing that I'm still always feeling like I'm contending with and trying to dig myself out of. And something that has really helped me during those lows is talking to a therapist. Having just another person that I can vent these feelings and emotions to, and being an objective other party that can just help guide working through what those feelings are so I can better focus on the future. And one of the services that I have used in the past for this is BetterHelp. It's very easy to get started. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/Kevin Kenson. That'll take you to a survey you can fill out that will help make sure that you're matched with a therapist that fits your particular needs. And there's a whole lot of options with this. You can choose the way that you want to engage with your therapist, whether you're better with texting, calling, doing video chat. And if for whatever reason the first therapist you're matched with doesn't feel like a good fit for whatever reason, you can change over to another one that you can find better fits your situation. I truly believe that we all just need help at one point or another, and having someone to talk to can be a great aid, and BetterHelp can help you find that person. Option number 3, the last of the big first-party manufacturers at least, is the Nintendo Switch Pro Controller. I honestly think the Pro Controller is one of the most underappreciated controllers out of the current gen because, generally speaking, I think it feels fantastic. Honestly, the biggest problem it runs into, I think for some people, is just the fact that its particular grip design does favor smaller hands versus larger, and so that can be an immediate point against it if you have large hands. But otherwise, as far as buttons, stick, quality, all that stuff feels, it is fantastic. The biggest initial headache with it though is the button layout, which is actually very easy to deal with. Despite the fact this is the layout that Nintendo has been using forever since the SNES days as far as how ABXY are all set up, it actually goes the opposite direction of how ABXY is on the Xbox controller, which as I said earlier, is what a lot of games assume you are using, including the Steam Deck's own built-in controls. So when you first use a Switch Pro controller with the Steam Deck, you're gonna get really confused because A is where B should be and vice versa. Now, thankfully, there is a very easy fix for this. When you first connect this to your Steam Deck, you can actually go into the Switch Pro controller settings and change it to not using the flipped Nintendo inputs. This does mean that you're still going to be seeing prompts for the traditional ABXY layout on Xbox controllers, and that's going to get a little confusing if you're the type to actually look at your controller to double check what button is which, because when a game tells you, hey, you should press the A button, it's not going to be the A button on the Switch controller, it's going to be the B button. So there's still a little bit of that confusion there, but if you're used to just going by the feel of the controller and you're thinking about where A would be on the Steam Deck, it's much easier in my mind to turn that option off if you're going to use the Switch Pro controller. One important thing worth noting though is that when compared against the Xbox and PlayStation controllers, one thing missing on the Nintendo Switch Pro controller is you don't have traditional full pull triggers. It is just a button. And in those games where pull distance matters, for instance, say racing games, you're not going to be able to do that with the Switch Pro controller. So if that is something that matters to you, having an actual variable pull distance, be aware the Switch Pro controller is not going to be able to do that. So that's it for the kind of big 3 traditional first-party options, but there are some third-party options I also really enjoy that I think offer some unique additional choices. And the first of those I want to talk about, which is actually just a whole line of different controllers, the APIDO Ultimate. There's a few different versions of this you can grab. There's an Ultimate Wired, there's an Ultimate C, which is the cheaper version with lesser features. There's the Ultimate C Wired, so it has the trimmest feature list possible, and thus is also the cheapest option available. What's really nice about this is because of those variable options, you can pick between a few different choices to fit whatever your particular budget is. And if you're looking for the cheapest option out there, the Ultimate C Wired, in my mind, dollar for dollar, is one of the best options out there. Now, if you're willing to throw down for the full feature version of the controller, which honestly isn't any more expensive than the other first-party options, options. There's a lot of additional benefits you're able to take advantage of as far as customization features, macros, remappable buttons. One of the things worth noting about this one, style-wise, is that it's very similar to the Switch Pro controller as far as feeling goes. The downside of that being, like we mentioned earlier, if you have larger hands, you might need to steer away, but otherwise it is very comfortable. Buttons and sticks all feel fantastic. And one of the things about the Ultimate in particular that I love, it's a very specific feature, but I just think it's super neat. It comes with a charge stand. The charge stand has a USB slot for you to plug the 2.4 gigahertz dongle in. So you can actually do a little Steam Deck dock setup where you take your Steam Deck dock, you plug the charge base in for the APIDO Ultimate, and that's gonna act also as the wireless transmitter, keeping it nice and hidden and giving you a place to cradle the controller when you need to charge it between sessions. As far as a more traditional controller option goes that is not a first-party option, the APIDO Ultimate is currently my top favorite. And again, if you're looking to spend as little as possible, I think the C line for these controllers, wired or wireless, are some fantastic values. And last but not least, something that's a little different from the others on this list, and this is a controller that when I first tried it out, I enjoyed it, but I was kind of middling on it, and as time has gone by, it has grown on me more and more and more as I keep reaching for it in different situations. The Victrix Pro BFG. Because there's a Pro controller option, this is one of the ones on the list that is a bit pricier, but it does offer, I think, some very unique benefits. Primarily the fact that this is a modular controller design. What that means is that you can actually swap out the different parts of it to create different button layouts depending on what kind of games you're playing. For instance, if there is for some reason certain games you prefer playing with offset sticks, but then other ones where symmetrical makes more sense to you, well then rather than having to grab for a separate controller, you can actually just unscrew the modules on this and flip them around to have the stick layout be however you want. Or this whole module right here can actually be removed and replaced with another option that is a 6-button setup designed for fighting games in mind. This comes with other things too, like different stick head options, different D-pads. There are all different kinds of ways that you can assemble this thing, and one thing I do very much appreciate about it is that it comes with a carrying case that fits all of this. There's been a couple different Pro controllers I've looked at in the past where, you get different stick heads or additional little parts and no place to store them. The carrying case of Victrix is going to carry all the extra parts you can swap out, including the screwdriver that you use for moving things around, giving you one convenient place to keep it all at once. Now, this particular Victrix Pro BFG I'm holding is the PlayStation version that does work on PC as well. They also have an Xbox designed one that works on PC as well, so either of those can be one you grab to use with Steam Deck. It can also be used in a dedicated wired mode or wireless mode, so if you care about having the input latency as low as possible, or you just want the convenience of a wireless signal, that is an option you're able to do. With wireless, you are going to be relying on a dongle though, and not just a Bluetooth connection. If you're willing to spend a little bit more money and you want a single controller to cover a wide variety of playstyles, particularly if you enjoy fighting games, the Victrix Pro BFG is a fantastic option that works just fine with the Steam Deck. All in all, I think any of the controllers I've talked about are great choices to use with the Steam Deck. It just comes down to your individual needs. Again, the Xbox controller I think is a fantastic all-rounder, but you just have to keep in mind you don't have motion controls if that's something you care about. DualSense offers that and so much more at the expense of battery life. Switch Pro controller, I think, is an unsung hero they just have to deal a little bit with on some button confusion, and the APIDO and Victrix options, I think, lay out some very awesome third-party options at varying price points depending on how many special features you want to have to take advantage of. All of these controllers are listed down below in the description, so if you're interested in grabbing any of them, make sure to check it out down there. I do want to thank BetterHelp once again for sponsoring a part of today's video, which you will also see their link down that description once again. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you guys later.